Hello world, Coach Nexa here. As you can see, the AC is off and the lights are on despite it being hot out. Now I mention that because my spirits say it actually will help with today's lesson. Today's lesson is the Naiji Faithful Fanatic. Okay, this is a bit uncomfortable for me. I don't like the heat, and so that's an issue. But my spirits tell me that would be the proper enactment of this ritual, the most proper I could make it. And that gets to the faithful fanatic part is, what is it you're supposed to be doing? That's what you're faithful to. And then fanatic is, as best as you possibly can, which you won't know until you do it with everything that you have. And when you put in that context, at least when Naiji are enacting parts of their story where they need to do V rituals, that's the standard. That is a standard that Naiji bring and need to bring and should bring. Okay, let's see. There is some crossover with the varieties of frenzy. We talk, for example, about warp frenzy, and that's particularly related to V. And V warp frenzy is one of the many awesome powers of the Faithful Fanatic. But the Faithful Fanatic actually has a lot more than that. Because it's all about enacting, living, being the way that your spirits, your simulator, your belief system tells you to do it. So I'll get to that in a second, but I'll put it in its proper context. I'm going to do a quick spirit form hierarchy: Mazu, Daryu, other Fumasta, and all of them involving the Faithful Fanatic. So the Faithful Fanatic, it can go up through multiple levels. All right, so at a Mazu level, Naiji are going to have a propensity, and thus a spirit form for it, to guide and to teach, help enact, is geeking out, for lack of a better term, just wanting to really try something out, to really give it a go. Then you have the Daryu. The Daryu takes it, and that's where the warp frenzy comes in, which is basically, I want to see or be what's on the other side, and I'm just going to squeeze myself through the forge of natural law and my current existence and my spirits, like just putting pressure, and I'm going to go through that pressure and be one with it going forward. And when I do, stuff will just happen. I'll take whatever losses I need to, but I will go forward. I will become a shapeless, single-minded, unstoppable force. And then at some point later on, I'll reform as a human being. So that's kind of like the Daryu version, and it doesn't have to be negative. It can be very, very positive. It just means that you're under a lot of stress, and so this desire to enact and to be the way, you keep doing it. Even when, I guess it's a good time to bring it up, because I was going to bring it up later. No, I'll bring it up later because I don't want to get too detailed. There's a lot more fun things to do here, but I'm going to get a basic hierarchy. So that's the Daryu version of it in general. Then the other, artistic appreciation. So the Faithful Fanatic basically now wants to honor what it has gotten, what it has been able to grab or protect. When it has done this, it's going to want to honor it in its best way it can. A lot of times it has to do with things it knows, things it has learned in its journeys. It wants to do something to express it in the most artful, impactful, memorable way possible. And then the Fumasta is, for the Naiji, it's about learning new things. And you can learn things that are new to you, and that will be the beginning of that. What I'm going to call apex experience. It is an apex experience for you. But what will often happen with Naiji over time is, as they continually want to have some sort of apex experience, whether it be making a gourmet meal that even a gourmet chef would be proud to say they did, so they can say, I got to eat that. Or they go off and jump off mountains and fly around in flight suits and do things like that because it's very, very different and unusual. But as you keep doing that, often you'll have to create new experiences, and you'll have unprecedented experiences that are not just unprecedented for you, but they'll be unprecedented for other humans as well. People often ask, what was it like to do that? And IG like actually doing stuff that will actually have people asking, because we like being asked about a process. So doing any kind of feat, it can be painting something very subtle. It can be making a fabulous kind of rock concert sort of deal. It can be making a very serene cosmology presentation. It can be doing any of these things, but it likes to be asked follow-up questions. So if V does its job right, it'll get follow-up questions, where its other meets it with the knee. Okay, so that's basically Mazout. You're just going to geek out in general when you learn new stuff. Naiji, our appetites, and that gets into basically geeking out, more frenzy, artistic appreciation, APEC experience. All right, got that. All right, now let's jump around because there's a lot of cool stuff to talk about in more detail there. One is, and this relates to all levels of spirit forming, from the Mazout up to the Fumasta. There is like a binging quality to the Naiji V, a devouring quality, which comes from a ravenous appetite. Now, all the hunters in general tend to go longer periods of time before feeding than other mojos do. And they're comfortable with that. Lots of planning and then a big payout. So that big payout needs to be big enough to fuel you all the way through, recovering from all the efforts you just spent to get this, plus giving you more energy to go forward, to discover new areas, to go check out new trails, go find new things, to challenge yourself, accomplish that, kind of apex style, finding things that are challenging, but there's a big reward, and putting yourself in that mix. Okay, that's kind of how all hunters do things. So with the Naiji, you'll have that, but you'll also have the ravenous factor, which is that the food, unlocking secrets, the mysteries of the cosmos, the mysteries of existence, of everything, of natural law itself. The mysteries of natural law itself, that's what you're hungry for. And to be able to enact experiences that let you learn that and let you show by your being, by your way, that you know it. It feels really good for an IG to be able to do that. So when you are going to have to percolate long for being a hunter, but then there's less generally opportunities for the IG, or they're at least less readily available, less spelled out, less obviously there for you to go grab. I mean, you can go grab artful experiences, but it's a little more challenging than just grabbing fruit. So that makes any sense. All right. So that's something important to note, is that that's not a bad thing, but a lot of these are like connected. As soon as they one, it goes to the other one. There's the issue with the Naiji's V becoming addictive. This is interesting because Naiji can have very addictive personalities, and they can also have these like strongest wills you've heard of in that regard. Strongest wills as in they just don't do those kinds of things at all, or strongest wills that they just decide that they were doing that and now they're just going to stop doing that. And this comes from when a Naiji gets an opportunity, like imagine like a dragon on the hunt, it's what it needs to get is large and usually not readily available. So when you grab it, you have to eat as much of it as you can at once, because the opportunity may not present itself. Like a Naiji, like just say conversation. Having the kind of conversation that you want to be having, that's an unusual circumstance, which is why you may have noticed that generally when that opportunity comes up, you kind of binge conversate. All right, so this is good as long as it's done not to excess and it's done on the proper things. Most IG will, I think, have some understanding of this, of when you find a song or a show series or a certain walk in the woods that you like, or a certain museum that you like, a visual artist that you're into, whatever it is, you will just start drinking as if you've been starving for a very, very long time. And you need to feed yourself. One, to replenish your stores, which you now realize you are dissatisfied. You are highly dissatisfied with the resource influx you've been receiving. both Ni Alpha just have to deal with that. When they wake up, they have the least servicing, unless there's special accommodations made, of their source power. It's the most easily ignored. Okay, so because everyone else is going to ask, like, what's the baby doing with you know, their food, and is the baby going to be a warrior, or is it going to be a, you know, crafts person? It gets very visceral very fast for pretty much all babies around the world, for humans. The ravenous quality will be helpful in making you hungry enough to go the lengths you need to go to, and then when you get to it, you pounce on it, like you are really present. You're present and you pounce on opportunity. You recognize that this is the part of the story that's really for you, and you jump in. You know, kind of like an actor has been looking like, where's my lines, where's my lines, where's my lines, and suddenly you see, a monologue. Like apparently all your lines are all condensed into one area, and now it's time to go. It's go time. So you want to like drink in life and be one with life and the world as much as you can, because that moment is rare, but you can get a ton of sort of portaling of wisdom, both from your spirits and the world at the same time, as long as you can just surf that sweet spot in between. There's a lot of like surfing your spirits with your V. Your faithful fanatic's a bit of a spiritual surfer. What else? Oh, just going back to how Naiji, you have being possessed and being addicted. And Naiji had to watch out for that, because the way we work, there's a lot of those elements that can go there if you don't watch out for it. But that's actually how it's designed to work. The way it's designed to work, and this we see the real like power of the Naiji, is self-possession. And self-possession means that you are actually listening to just your higher spirits and what you yourself can consciously understand at its highest level. So you're always going the highest you can. From there, you are self-possessed, and then you're not addicted, you're actually, that's when you're a fanatic. So your fanaticism is your resistance to any other addictions, but really what it does is it converts anything that would be addictive into being fanatically self-possessed by the highest path. And so that will tune your V appetite to want to feed the higher spirits what they want. And it's good to be ravenous in that way. What has to be watched out for sometimes, though, is not knowing how to get the connection that you want, or being able to find it immediately in your environment, and then finding, you know, sort of tainted workarounds. We all have to do this to some degree. Life is, to some degree, you have to compromise. Naiji loathes to compromise. But you have to at least compromise to the realities that you're being presented with, insofar as it does influence my selection of choices. I always choose the way I go, and I always can choose a high way. So that can never be taken away from me. Reality can never take away that. Naiji are supremely independent minded that way. I can always choose something where I could say, that was my choice. I chose that way. And that way is a highway that I can feel good about. So there's no situation Naiji's in they can't do that. Find something to do with their body, their words, their bank account, buttons they can push. They can do something in the world to make it be like it's supposed to. And if they do that, they win. But you do need to recognize the V can create a selection of possible choices, and then you can choose within that. But that, you know, you always still can say, I chose to go that way. So it's interesting. A lot of the most poignant moments you've seen in movies will have that kind of moment where there's a oneness with the choices that seem like they're available, and choosing a higher choice. It still recognizes influences of the world. It recognizes that someone's hanging off a cliff. It recognizes someone's actually got a gun to someone's head. It recognizes that it's raining right now. It recognizes these things, but it chooses something bigger than that, and it moves accordingly. So it's really, really awesome that way. What else is a part of that? Anyway, when you're like that, then the Naiji will become a very finicky eater who is ravenous, like a fanatic should be, about the food you need to get. You're like, I need to get the food I need to get. I know the food I need to get, I can smell it, and there's a connection between like the perceptions of the V and the Ni, and you can like, between the two of them, you can just smell it. You can smell what you're supposed to be going to get in the world, and you're on that trail. Very, very cool. And then lesser things to be like possessions of the world or addictions, those actually are uninteresting to you. They get in your way, and you kind of just burn through them. That's an interesting dichotomy, because a lot of Naiji tend to be extreme on one end of that scale, depending where they are in their life currently. What else? Style your ride. My spirits gave me several things to talk about. One was style your ride. You may have noticed the Naiji tend to style most things they do on a regular basis. If it's going to be part of their life, it's their car, it's their home, they tend to try and make it artful. So the physical body of the Naiji and all of that particular visceral particulars, that's like your ride, or at least part of your ride. And so there's a styling of the movements. Naiji, it's another one of the extreme things here where it kind of goes one way or the other depending on how the Naiji has conditioned themselves. That's that real like jump out of your skin energy that Naiji will often feel when they're in a public place, particularly if there's a lot of people they don't know, things of that nature. And that's because you want to style your ride. And your ego will kind of let you know 4951 if you have the power for that. If you don't, you'll just sort of shrink and go into ghost walking mode. Maybe shrink's the wrong word, there can be shrinkage, but definitely you will fade, you'll dim, you'll mute. Or your ego is like, yeah, this is how I walk, this is how I talk, and there'll become an even more looseness. And the Naiji can really enjoy the fact that the world is watching them be themselves. It's very rewarding when the Naiji has the power to do that, and it's a code of conduct that they're enacting a ritual they feel good about. So yeah, I dance around like this and it looks goofy to you, but I don't care. I feel good doing it. I'm doing it because my spirits are telling me genius stuff that's really helpful to humanity. And so I do my little shiny baby dance when that happens. Okay, so there can be an enjoyment of being faithful. Really, that's the only word, that's why I keep choosing that word. Faithful can sound a bit, I don't know, weird to some people. But you have a fanatic's faith in what you're doing. Now, that's why this gets another thing too, is Naiji have to be really careful that they really know what they're doing and that they are using it for the best intentions possible. So if that's the case though, it will be optimized that once you have that you push really, really hard, you get really, really into it. You try and find what would move the world the most. It could be a subtle gesture, it could be a big presentation, but what would move? So the V of the Naiji also has the volcano percolation cycle into it, since that's kind of like the physical manifestation. And that is that the faithful fanatic, when it's going about its business, even when it's actually going la la la, today I'm getting herbs 354 and 897. There are 2 more of my 10,000 herb collection, and so it's just another day of you getting more special herbs from the forest. But there's an energy to it that other people will find magnetic, and often comes in that like volcanic percolation cycle where you are building. And there's a humming to you. Nijai are particularly gifted at picking up on this humming that dragons have as they're la la la, they're going around, but they're building up to have a V eruption. All of the percolation cycle, not just the eruption, is the V. That is physically, if you look at the volcano, it's kind of like the V. So the natural law principles, the seismic plate tectonic principles that cause it to happen. That's kind of like the Ni of it, for example. But the V, if you go all the way down it, is, and you have like in the G, could be like the topography of how it relates to the other things, water and mountains and things that are already in place, but whatnot. Anyway, long story short, as it gets down to the V, that's the volcano itself, what is protruding out of the ground and humans can actually look at and they can walk around and touch it. They can see if it's starting to rumble a little bit, if it's warmer than usual, and that relates very much to the V. So the Naiji V, being a faithful fanatic, if it's in data research mode, it will kind of have a hum to it of like a powerful entity that is not really paying attention to the world, it's just building its energy. But you don't really have a power to stop it. Yeah, like volcanoes, you may notice that they generally pop up places because you really can't do much about them. There's, at least right now, there's not really much in the way of like human-based power, even as strong as our civilization is right now, that really can do anything about volcanoes when volcanoes do stuff. You know, you can't like just sort of like knock it over like you do certain trees, and even though the root system is kind of like a volcano in a way, you can kind of like put something heavy enough on that. You can chop it down and put something heavy enough on it, and then you can just build your, your complexes there. But volcanoes, relating to the unprecedented way Naiji are when they erupt, it tends to be like that, where even when you are not yet erupting, there is a aura of power building. Nai is very unusual that way, that it actually uses a lot of this aura of, people are like, I don't know what that is, but I can feel it building. There's a humming to it that's building. Again, Nijai, most give to picking it up. Style your ride, your body, and so forth. I mentioned the magnetism, I must mention again, is you get a hero halo about you when Naiji do what they do. When Naiji are deep in their Nai, or they're kind of doing a lot of shape-shifting where they're hiding what they're doing or taking a form you wouldn't expect, they still have a magnetism to them, but it's less apparent to people. A lot of times the charisma is working on them, but they're not quite sure how or why or whatever. Nijai, like I said, are easier picking it up. But as you get down to the V, you start doing things that just stuns people and rivets their attention. It can be as simple as how you walk out on stage to how you rock out on stage, but all of it states through how you move and how you live that you represent the one way. You are faithful to it, and you will exert all of you to make that happen. You are bringing all of you. There is an awesomeness when a human brings all of them to something. Really is. Even when they are preparing to bring it. This is the kind of appeal that hunters in general have, particularly to gather others that they have, which is the building up, and there's a very compelling storyline that humans will recognize. They kind of give it like the hunter aura. And with Naiji, it tends to have like a metaphysical, like awestruck quality, because it also seems quite magical and it pushes people's buttons. What else? All in, mentioned that. What else? The great stuff. And there's a lot of crossover here. This part here of the Faithful Fanatic crossed over to Kensei lifestyle a bit, which is that Naiji, as I mentioned, I think in the Kensei filming, they have a desire to want to, in this relation to the Apex experience, to do things that are going to enlighten them. Even if that enlightenment is, getting whiskey. But if you've already had whiskey and you still want to have a whiskey experience, for example, it's not my thing, but some Naiji are into that. They'll often want to get something that is of higher quality. And they'll pay more money to get that because that experience is more elevated, more rarefied. Naiji tend to be drawn to that. Some Naiji take, rot gut and just binge on that until their head wants to explode. You're like, isn't that totally different? Not really, not if you understand Naiji. Some Naiji are like, I generally feel like I want to jump out of my skin, and so I feel better and can, it's unhealthy, but this is the thinking, and it does relate to the Faithful Fanatic. I want to be able to hear myself think more, and I need to be at ease. I need to be able to tune the world out or be more groovy with the world than I normally am in order to hear that. And so last time I had 12 shots of tequila, and I, didn't feel good the next day and wanted to throw up. This is why I wouldn't recommend doing that, but here's why some Naiji will go that way. You can use it all kinds of things. I use this as an example because a lot of people understand it. But for a moment in a certain like twilight period where they weren't feeling physical sickness yet, but they were feeling the effects of the alcohol, their head's in a rarefied space. And so in this case, it's not so much they want to drink rarefied whiskey in particular, they want to get to a rarefied state for them as far as inebriation. So it can come in all kinds of ways, but you want to get to some kind of special state. And so where it comes from, this is a proper thing, is Naiji want to experience the great stuff. And so that tells them they need to push themselves, and also as a part of that, experiment. This is where like the real adaptive part of the Naiji comes out, and it's very fetishy, but when Naiji get into it, they get very experimental about things that they're highly interested in. The more interested they are into it, the more that it means something to the character sheet, the more they feel that there's going to be certain 49, 51 bars they're going to have to clear to really be the hero. On those things, they will binge, they'll geek out, they will go kensei, they will become a faithful fanatic. Like I said, that is to have some taste of a great experience, a great existence, a great understanding. To be able to touch that for a little while and then bring it back and understand and process it. So drinking is very unhealthy. It's not my thing, like I said, but I did back in the day do it in that way. I've moved on from that, but I did for a while. And it must be stated that a lot of Naiji writers, for example, is a classic one that's well known, but a lot of other stories that are less well known, but I'll use writers. They get to a certain state with the caffeine and the drinking, caffeine in the morning, drinking throughout the day and more at night, in order to stay in a quasi state while the rest of the world gets arrested by what the general world activities are. So staying up in odd hours, we've mentioned that before, Naiji have a propensity for, it's all related to odd hours, later hours, times when people are less around. We also tend to like sort of very deep places in the earth or very high places, but generally not the general populated area. Anything that makes it more outlying. Yeah, anything that's like an outlier area, that's going to be more appealing. What else? What can a hero do? Another part of the V, and this is why it's hard to give like examples, although I haven't given them, because I'd have to give like an infinite number of examples. I can give you a little bit here just to give it like a taste of it. Is in doing pod layer over the many years I've been doing it since a wee child, there's lots of things that I needed to be able to do in the world that seemed unrelated to each other. So there wasn't necessarily like a skill crossover you could see immediately, and Naiji tend to do. We have like several skills that are really high level, and people are like, and we enjoy this comment too, that's an interesting character sheet to have those series of abilities, but actually to the Naiji, it made sense for what like a movie actor, like you were this big, then you were this big, then you did this skills training, then you did this dancing thing, which is totally unrelated. No, it's actually related if I'm trying to become an acting artist and I want to do certain roles to be able to really stretch my perspective shifting. So it's like a collection of how many different, highly different perspectives I could shift in my portfolio. So yeah. So you basically ask, what can a hero do? And that brings up, this is why I would take like infinite examples, but you get very creative. The V of the Naiji, if it's done correctly, the Faithful Fanatic will be channeling the other three pod powers, which means it'll have your one-way walker genius and drive. It's going to have your code of conduct, your integrity. It's going to be as unflappable and as hardcore as your hardcore humanist. So all that's going to be there if it's being done properly. And so you'll basically ask, could I, if I was thinking I would do music because I want to sing, but I can't find anyone to, there was actually Naiji in one of the things I read today that said this. They asked her about being such a well-known songwriter, and she was like, I started out just, I wanted to sing, but I couldn't get any songs. I wanted people to give me some songs I could sing, but it was very difficult. And so finally, I just decided, I want to sing, I want to sing, I want to sing. What can I do? I could write them. I could write those songs. Now you're like, I want to live out in the woods. Well, I don't know how to make a cabin, but could I? Could I learn to make a cabin? One thing Niger master of is why we do so good in acting, for example. I use that, but anything with like, we have to be an operative, and part of you being an operative means you shapeshift a lot. So the V will have a lot to do with the physical enactment shapeshifting. There's also the character shapeshifting, which is very, very important as well as principal shapeshifting. But this is the actual, the physical form shapeshifting. And so humans can do a lot of stuff. And particularly, say, Naiji, with our powers and our interest in it, if we're like, I want to go over there for the summer. Well, they're only doing jobs where you work in a fishery. But I could go to Japan for free for the summer if I work at fishing. Yeah. What do you got to do? Well, there's these technical skills, whatever. All right, let me see the manual. And you start getting into it, next thing you know, like, and you start, shucking some oysters and whatnot. You're like, I could do that for a summer. And so that's why Naiji experiment a lot. They're like, what could I do? Because a lot of humans cut off what they can do based on what they see as possible. Naiji, in general, if they're doing the pathway right, they tend to do it the other way around. Which I guess you wouldn't want every human doing it that way. That would probably be anarchy. But it's good to have some humans that don't do it that way. They actually get visions, and then they want to enact those visions, and then they actually kind of like test the world on what the world offers, and then experiment. Like just go out there and start tossing cabers, start trying to do different activities. That's one of the things they mention a lot of times when Naiji do anything sort of intense V, unusual V. It can be very subtle, it can be doing gardening, whatever, but it's very well done, so they've really geeked out on it. Anytime the Naiji's geeking out with their V like that, people are like, why'd you go that far? And they'll generally mention two things, plus other stuff, but these two come up all the time. One is, I wanted to honor this experience, this impression, this relationship, something, but there was something that moved me and it was a high thing and I wanted to honor it. And so if I had had more money, this botanical garden that apparently you say breaks the world record for having the most orchids or whatever, well, my spirits were into orchids, so that's why that happened. And if I had more money, if I had more people, if I'd had more training, you would have seen more orchids. So that's very, very cool. What else? The second reason. The second one is kind of relating to the last point. Knowing I could do it. Like, I just thought, could I put on a play? What does it take to do that in my local area? And actually going out there and walking the streets and going in and kind of like a video game, you kind of video game test out the world and you walk around like your own personal, first person shooter and you kind of see what can I do? And when I actually get like this, it's kind of funny because we tend to be very secretive and then our G can be very shapeshifty and actually sometimes we have a lot of social anxiety because of how we do socializing. But that can get very bold. But the V often tends to be the most bold the Naiji will be. And as this gets more bold, they almost always bring in the V. And there's a joy to honoring what you consider to be the most important things and to discovering with your physical life enactment something new. Like you walked 99 steps with your body and then you walked 100, and when you did that you crossed some kind of cool line, and apparently you've never done that or some other human's never done that before, or it's just neat, like I cross over this line and now I'm like in a different country, or I cross over this thing here and that means that the day goes into being a happy day instead of a sad day. And those turning points and knowing that you walk them out with your body, it feels really good when you do it. But it comes from the vision. But walking out the vision feels awesome. But only if you're faithful. But being faithful, you'll have to be a fanatic because you'll have to build everything, buy everything, bring everything, explain everything. But how much can I do? So if I'm actually into this, how can I lavish it with as much heroic human love, willpower, effort as possible. And that's why the Naiji V tends to be more sporadic, fetishy, very intense. But you learn a lot. There's a lot of learning about things in the process of coming to that V, enacting it, and then kind of remembering it. That's another one too, is the Faithful Fanatic is your main conduit to the world, not including your other, but with conscious powers, the Faithful Fanatic kind of walks around and does things, which is why it has to be faithful, because it's the one that gets bombarded by the world more than any of the other spirit forms. So it needs to be faithful to the vision, to be trusted out there, to operate as the front person for the team. What else? Visceral experimentation, I mentioned that. The desire for it, why it's important. Spiritual ritual enactment. The Faithful Fanatic basically is always trying to find a way to live artfully, to be able to turn the way it's doing dinner, the way it's having conversations, where it goes to hang out, turning that into, it means something artful and elevated and heroic and enlightened, hopefully. And the rest of the time, you'll be hunting for it. So, the Faithful Fanatic is basically looking for the opportunities in the world for you to go hunt, so you can actually go that far in your peak pathway and make your connection to your other. I often use the phrase, every fiber of my being. That's what the Faithful Fanatic does. Even when it's doing a lot of shape-shifting and a lot of mazoot work, that's still every fiber of its being, which is kind of tricky because you may need to do secret agent stuff because people don't understand around you what you're doing. But then creating the best physical workarounds possible, even if you're not explaining why you're doing it, that is being as faithful as you can. You're trying to make the best physical situation you can for yourself, being the hero you are in your higher story. So that's what you're trying to do. So yes, you can act with every fiber of your being, even if sometimes that means going into cloak mode. V can go into cloak mode, not like a you see nothing, but Naiji can do V things that distract people. They can play very good hosts. They can do very good at being tour guides. They can do very good at show and tell. All kinds of things like that Naiji excel at, and so it can be used to distract. And sometimes the Faithful Fanatic needs to do that. The Faithful Fanatic needs to distract the world from what you're doing so it doesn't bother you. Other times it needs to stand its ground. So the Faithful Fanatic, it has a very mercurial form of V, which is why it gets along well with the knee of your other. And that's because it moves however it needs to move for the Nai. So the Faithful Fanatic really has a mindset, a spirit set of be the best I can be, whatever that means, come what may. And the Faithful Fanatic basically just stays, if it's doing its job right, in constant contact with the world and then asking what it's supposed to be doing. And it'll be doing that as it's acting it out. As it's acting it out, it'll be going like this, like this, like this, like this. And so that's why sometimes the Faithful Fanatic can almost have like a autopilot quality. We've talked about another thing, autopilot mode that Naiji have, lucid dreaming and things like that. This very much gets to it. The Faithful Fanatic will have a lot to do with lucid dreaming where you're walking around. Because it can go autopilot two ways. There's a lot of autopilot or self-possession with the Naiji. If the world's throwing too much to process at once, it'll go with what the vision last told to do, and they'll just operate in real time, making the best options it can. In every split second bullet time, it'll take a little intake of air and try to pipe in a little more Nai so it knows what it's doing, but never enough to fall off the surfboard. Its main job will be, with what it last knew from the Nai, stay on the surfboard going forward and upward. But then it can go the other way, where the Nai pushes all the way into the Faithful Fanatic, and then it's an autopilot in a different way, where the world's throwing stuff at you, but you're not reacting to that really. You're reacting pretty much exclusively to what the Nai is telling you, and that's like autopilot this way. Autopilot of your Nai moving your V, as opposed to the world moving your V, and then your V will go on autopilot based on the last intake of Nai they had. But either way, your Faithful Fanatic will do a lot of autopilot, but that sounds like it doesn't choose. It does by the Nai, Ji, and Zai positioning your spirit into every fiber of your being in your body and the halo of energy around you, of your potentiality. Okay, so that makes it to where it will do what it's supposed to moment to moment, but there is choice. I think there's even something about this in like legal stuff. I'm not as up on that, but I think there is something where, what were you thinking when you walked up the hill? Now, when the shuriken was thrown past your head by the 14-year-old kid, and then a gunshot went off from behind you, we recognize that you went into instinct mode, autopilot mode. But what were you thinking? What was your intentions? Where was your head space, your heart space? Where was your spirit set when that happened? The Faithful Fanatic does it a lot, where it takes whatever is the highest thing you've currently plugged into yourself, and then it will react to the world as the world gives it stuff. So you can work your Faithful Fanatic in two ways: by getting it more and more in alignment with your other spirit forms, so it knows what its spirit set point is. And then it can react in an infinite amount of random V crazy visceral ways as life comes up. But there'll be good choices. There'll be good instinctual choices. Oh, I'm running out of time, but I've got most things I want to talk about. That's pretty good. Every Father Being, shape-shifting. The Faithful Fanatic will put the vision above what the world is telling it, and that will actually increase your shape-shifting abilities. The more of your worldly ego that comes in, your V will become more specifically and immediately helpful, but it'll lack real potency and long-lasting impact. So there's a compromise there. And the Faithful Fanatic is always actually making these choices, but it does it in bullet time. Totally present. Your Faithful Fanatic is in charge of making you present. If it's a Faithful Fanatic, though, you'll be present in relationships and in rituals that allow you to be the vision while interacting with the world. In which case, your hero halo will continue. You'll have that aura of awesomeness. Anything else? Hero halo gives off a magical magnetism. Very, very cool. Artful answering. Let's want to get to real quick here before I sign off. Is a lot of times the Faithful Fanatic, it wants to live an artful life, and it helps you to enact an artful life, and a lot of that is coming with artful answers. And that's something else you hear a lot. A third thing I mentioned before about when Naiji geek out and stuff, people go, oh, what made you do that? One is I was honoring something. Two is I wanted to learn about myself. Another one is I wanted to do like something to process this. And that creates an answer for me. This art can often be an answer for other people, but a lot of times people are like, what was that? Well, you know, a relative of mine got in a car accident and they passed away, and it was very traumatic for me, and I was having all these things inside me, and I needed a way to process that. And this was an artful way to do something with that. And now, usually whenever you have stuff in your mind, if you think on it in the highest way you can, and then you become the best hero you can, set the best intention you can, and then you're like, I'm going to be very serious about this. I'm not going to pull off the mark just when things get a little difficult. I'm going to go even when it gets hard. Then you will always be presented, your psyche as an IG is very, very creative, coming up with an artful answer to your situation. And you then have to enact it. Doesn't mean it'll be easy, but it's because it's not easy that it's so moving to you and so moving to others. Last thing, oh cool, I got almost everything here. like 1 minute, I can do it, is I'm up, I'm up. Your V, like me, is a very up power, and I like the phrase, I'm up, my spirits give it to me a lot, and it means the first I'm up is actually, there's like 3, so it's like I'm up, I'm up. The first I'm up is the moment's here. I can see through the story, my mental powers, that the moment is here. So I'm up, like, kind of like you're up on deck, like I'm up presently. I'm presently up to do something. Life is expecting me to do something. I need to do something. Then there's like I'm up. I am geared up. I'm bringing all of me. Are you up? You up? Yeah, I'm up. I know that I'm up, like my turn, so I am personally up. And that will take me up. I will go up and take higher ground because I'm up. And I need to be up because I'm up. It's my time. Time to go. All right, with that, I'll say it's time to go for now. That was pretty good. All right, see you later, guys and gals, all you kids out there. Bye-bye.